Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the world where we live. I am Jared. This is John, who you're familiar with, probably. And to my left, or right, if you're looking at the screen right now, is Anthony. And we will regrettably not be winning any awards for diversity tonight, and that's obviously because all three of us voted for the same political party.
Act all the way, guys. Act all the way. Libertarianism is the only answer.
That is correct. The ACT Party.
You voted ACT?
Yes, and I voted for Denise Lee, the national candidate for Ellerslie.
I would have, but I'm not an electorate.
Despite her tongue lashing that she got in the press for going against Judith Collins. But anyway, we have an election coming up on Saturday night, and we are here to discuss that topic. Would you like to start, John?
So I think the first thing that you wanted to cover was the New Zealand media coverage of the election. I believe you've got some pretty strong opinions of that.
I certainly do. Well, basically, it comes back down to this, and I first observed this right after Jacinda Ardern was made the leader of the Labour Party in 2017, and even old Winston Peters commented on this prior to the 2017 election. He thought that Jacinda Mania, as they were all calling it, was driven in large part by, quote, a very uncritical media. Now, over the last 3 years, I can honestly say I have not observed a media that has been, I guess, at best uncritical, and at worst downright obsequious and fawning over the current government.
Why do you think that is, though?
Well, it's no secret that a lot of people in the media are left-leaning, and there's also been some very egregious examples of this.
Such as?
So Jacinda Ardern will announce a new policy, call a press conference, and will get thrown softball question after softball question by Jessica Mutch Mackay, who happens to be married to Jacinda Ardern's own bodyguard.
We're calling her Jessica.
The media made a big ballyhoo of this. They were saying, "Oh, it's a look at it. It's wonderful when they got married. It's like a romantic sort of schoolgirl romance going on." The rest of us shook our heads in disbelief because it appears to be a blatant conflict of interest.
I think that the second one that everybody is looking at is all the COVID announcements, which are blatant Labour Party advertisements at the moment.
And on top of that, when you look on NewsHub or 3 News, so say Labour announce a policy, and I saw this several months ago, but there's plenty of examples of this. The way the story will be, so say it's Jacinda Ardern making a speech in a marae or somewhere like that, it'll start with her making the speech. That will talk about the background and what the policy in particular is going to do better and why it's required. There will be no critical analysis of it. You know, if it's welfare, do we need more welfare? Is this a good idea, given it has not worked very well in the past?
Okay, sure. So what would you like to see the media actually
balance
then?
Fair and balanced.
What do you mean by balance? That's a very nebulous term.
There is no problem with advertising. Well, no, there is a problem with advertising. There is no problem with showing the information and showing what a political party is doing. But if you do it fairly, if you're going to be very nice with the current government,
define fairly,
then you can be very nice to the opposition as well when they criticise it.
I don't think the media should be nice. I think that is the purpose of the Fourth Estate, is to call out politicians on their blatant lies. And all of the politicians do it, even the ones that I like. They backpedal, they change their steps all the time.
Exactly.
The whole point of the media is to do investigative journalism and get to that point. And are you sort of on the same page, or have you got a bit of a different opinion?
I think that the media is inherently biased because of those political affiliations, but the ultimate goal of a media company should be to report news. It should be telling you what happened, why it happened, what they think might happen based on that, but not, oh, we're going to predict something that's favorable. We just need to say, logically what is going to happen, rather than taking sides. And that's what they're doing. They're hoping for an expected outcome.
Do you think they're just making emotionally based arguments then?
That's always going to be the case. Everyone's going to have an emotional attachment to something they believe in. But yes, essentially, that's what they're doing. It's going to happen in any industry. But the problem in New Zealand is all of the media companies are left-wing, and they're just going to play soft on every single left-leaning party.
Everyone except bloody Mike Hosking, and we've already white-knighted for a once, so we're going to do it again tonight.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you go on the internet, you see a lot of Labour supporters who are constantly referring to people in the media as misogynist bigots and everything, and they hate the government and they don't understand why. Look, I get it. I'm talking about the journalists. I'm not talking about the commentators. Commentators are biased. They do have their own political views. Hosking, Guy and Espiner, Barry Sober, it really doesn't matter.
Paddy Gower?
Paddy Gower, absolutely.
I think he did a passable job during the election debate, though. Like, I think people were unnecessarily harsh there.
Debates are... During debates, they are expected to rein in their personal biases. We saw this with Mike Hosking. He did it very well. There was plenty of people saying, oh, he shouldn't have been the moderator in 2014, 2017. And lo and behold, he did a fantastic job. There were no complaints after the fact saying he was harsh on one and soft on the other. The point is, though, that in general, the so-called journalists who are supposed to be, as we've established, they're supposed to be harsh, they are supposed to be critical, they have been anything but.
But in one specific bias, I think what the point is that we're making, if they were incredibly harsh and critical to everybody, as they should be, they're there to find out what the underlying policies and basis of truth, how these politicians that literally control most of the aspects of our lives every day are actually coming to these determinations. And what they're not doing, which is our complaint about the media globally, it's not just in New Zealand either, is this massive bias in favour of the soft, touchy-feely left all the time. And there's no substance, as far as we can tell, to what I would consider to be left-wing policies in general. And I think we're really seeing a swing globally towards actually a more libertarian standpoint for that reason. Because being a libertarian myself, I don't actually care if you're left and right. I only care whether you're authoritarian or libertarian. That's the only thing that matters. Are you voting for more freedom or less freedom? And what I would like to see is more investigation about those particular points to elucidate the politicians' perspective on how they're going to implement that policy into my life, because that is now the use of force.
And it's important. It's important to have a media that holds the government to account. Fans of the government might disagree very, very loudly with that statement, but at the end of the day, it's the cornerstone of democracy itself. You are allowed to criticise the government, and the media should help us do it.
And this is what new media is doing. It allows people like us, with no skills or expertise, to actually go and do exactly what we're doing, put this crap up on YouTube, and have our own say. I mean, we all watched the Mike Hosking video earlier. Do you want to quickly comment on that? Because I think we're all pretty much in favour, because... go Judith Collins, well done. Call out those fat fucks.
This is... Go on.
I think it's great. I mean, obviously, sitting on the right side of things and being libertarian, I personally think it's true. But you could also say that it is biased in itself. But, it could go either way. It depends on how you look at events. It's satire, really. That's all it is. And satire is supposed to be biased in one way too.
Why do you think it's satire?
Because it's invoking a comedic effect on something that is true, but it is slightly taking the piss out of it, if you will. It's saying, oh, well, you can go and be the wrong race and then go and get into med school. It's like, well, no one's actually ever said that they're the wrong race. We all know what we're talking about here. But the government's actions and policies over time have actually reinforced that idea. Everyone knows that's what's happening, but no one's actually said that.
Yeah, it's sort of selecting for race, which is something that we're all very much against in the first place. It shouldn't be selected by race at all. It shouldn't be selected by weight or any of your other mutable characteristics.
No.
It should be selected by meritocracy.
I
Are you good enough?
I think everything he said is true, but I do think it is for comedic effect, and there is satire in it.
Fair. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, definitely. Mike's Minute was a little... It's got to be entertaining, because it's entertainment,
It's
right?
got to
That's
be
how you get clicks.
entertaining. I wouldn't necessarily call it satire for the simple reason that it's really in line with everything Mike Hosking has always been saying. And of course, in case anyone hasn't seen the video, these were Mike Hosking's comments on Jacinda Ardern. I can't remember the exact thing she said. It was about you can't blame systems for you being overweight. It comes down to personal responsibility.
Judith Collins, not Jacinda.
Sorry,
Attributed to the
Collins.
correct person.
Yeah.
Look,
Well,
you're
hey,
doing this
same letter, right?
I'd say if it was Jacinda, it'd be pretty ironic, her saying that.
that would be
when
bloody
she
funny.
takes no
Go
personal
Jacinda,
responsibility.
get out there and do it.
and that's
Go
the
and
thing.
resign.
Yeah, well, you're a communist, Jacinda, right? Right, okay, well, one of the big costs to our health system is obese people in this country. We don't have a starvation problem, we have an overweight problem. You're a communist. Communism actually works quite well for this. Get those people out there, make them run down the bloody block. Do what you're supposed to do as a bloody communist and stop being a sissy socialist for once in your life.
You're giving them too much food. You need to just give them just enough, and then the state can reinvest those resources elsewhere. Why are you investing so much money in food to make people fat when you could be investing that in, I don't know, making your PR stunts look way better? Come on, Jacinda.
Even donating it to St. John Ambulance. But I think it's
that
very.
would actually be a good use.
I think it's very telling that the poverty-stricken people in a communist country are basically walking skeletons. They're starving to death.
Proper communism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Poverty-stricken people in a democratic country are often have the opposite problem.
So, I think that kind of naturally wraps it up. But you really should go and watch Mike's Minute on what Judith Collins says about obesity. I think it's really well worth a watch. And you've got, 2 days before the election? 2 days to go on Saturday. And the most important thing about all of this is go and vote. You don't have to agree with us at all. Just exercise your democratic rights so you can't complain afterwards.
But to add to that, I always thought it was wrong the amount of hate people would be thrown if they decided not to vote. And I think that after the 2016 election, if you didn't like Trump, if you didn't like Clinton, not voting for either candidate was absolutely a legitimate position to take. People say, our ancestors died so we could vote. No, our ancestors died for our freedom, and you do have a freedom to decide not to vote if you don't trust anybody. And look, if you don't trust anyone, that's the way the political system works, and it doesn't do anything for you, then that's perfectly fair.
I would argue that in that case, you need to make a protest vote.
Who would you vote for in a protest vote?
Trump. Trump is always the protest vote.
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand, David Seymour is the protest vote.
Fair.
David Seymour is the protest vote. David Seymour is not one of the two big parties, National or ACT. He is against the establishment. He's generally in favour of freedom. He's generally in favour of libertarianism. That is why I have already voted ACT. Everybody knows this. It's no secret. This is why I'm voting libertarian, because freedom of choice is primary.
If you're stuck between Labour and National, which so many people are, they just flip-flop depending on who they perceive are doing the most or going to do the best, then at the same time you know that they've both made fuck-ups over the course of previous terms. You could vote for ACT, and that could be a third party. A lot of people, my mother included, voted for Labour because they're like, oh, well, I've always voted at Labour, and they seem to be doing more. It's like, well, what are your actual issues? What do you want? What do you want to achieve? is Labour doing that? You need to look at everything that you need, everything that each party is doing, and make a conscious decision. Go and vote. Don't abstain unless you're absolutely sure no party will sustain your issues.
I think that is actually an excellent point. And I would advise everybody who watches this to literally take that advice and go and vote for one of the smaller parties that better represents your opinion and perspective. It might be the Greens, it might be New Zealand First, Advance Party, it could be the New Conservatives. Go and do the Vote Compass New Zealand, find out which party agrees with you the most, give your party vote to that party, and give your electoral vote to the party that you like the best. And that's a strategic way of doing your vote this time round.
I am not a fan of Gareth Morgan, and I haven't been since reading the Listener magazine as a child, as a 9-year-old,
Since
back in the year 2000, that was headlined Ban the Cat. But he was absolutely right in the wake of the disastrous performance by the Opportunities Party in 2017, when he said essentially we lost, and they flamed him, they called him a sore loser and all sorts of, and a lot of nasty things than that even. And he basically said, look, the reason we failed was because the electorate lack the intelligence to see the points we're trying to make. And he was absolutely right, because the vast majority of people, they don't vote for the party which aligns with their political beliefs. They see it as a two-horse race, Labour, National, and let's be honest, I'm not a fan of either of them. And this is mainly because they are moderates. They are centrist parties. John Key's National government they were Labour light, basically. There's very little to choose between them. One's a bit more pro-business, the other's more pro-social investment. But really, when it all comes down to it, people are not...
I like you, Judith, but you need to accept your moniker and go out and crush some socialists instead of being Labour light. And also, Jacinda Ardern, here's a tip for you actually as well. If you're going to be a communist, be a proper communist. For the love of God, get off the fence. Go and do it then. Nobody will vote for you. Well, maybe 36% of the population.
To add on to what Jared is saying, it's very true that most people will go, moderates will go left, right, whatever. And I think that is actually purely based on who they like. It's an emotional attachment to that leader. So, Jacinda, she's very conversational, she's very well presented, she's very nice. Okay. What do you know about her policies? Oh, what policies? I don't know anything. National, just Judith. Oh, she's great. She crushes people. Oh, but I don't like her face. I'm going to go vote for Jacinda. Whatever. The thing is that it's actually going to affect you is not how they look, not how they present themselves, maybe a little bit, but those policies that everyone who stands behind them represents. So it's about 20% the leader, 80% the rest of the party. Because without the rest of the party's votes on bills, in government, and all of that,
supply and confidence,
then it's not gonna go through. Ultimately, your electorate representative has to vote on any bill that goes through government. You should look at their policy that can help you understand how they might vote.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. I think probably with that we can move on to the next topic.
Basically, the next topic is let's have a look over the polls.
Bye, Winston. It's been fun. Don't worry, I'm totally going to buy your book. I'm really interested. It sounds awesome, man. Do it.
I voted for Winston Peters in 2017. It was the first time I ever voted, by the way.
Actually.
Which is partially why I'm so anti being flamed for not voting.
Yeah.
But it was essentially the kiss of death, and we knew that from the outset. When he decided to go with the Labour Party, the vast majority of New Zealand First voters expected him to go with the National Party. It was always going to happen. He's torpedoes his own chances in this election. I won't miss him, not necessarily because he went with Labour, but because he has backtracked on his core promise. He has done absolutely nothing. And look, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying he should have done anything about mass immigration. But he betrayed his... There was a core policy since 1996. And he betrayed everybody.
He's actually got what he's want now. The borders are closed, so we're not getting any migrants.
He also got to be
great
Prime
success
Minister
then.
for a little while.
He
so-
did.
He's actually one of the few politicians that has literally achieved all of his goals in politics.
So hopefully he'll take the hint, and when he's voted out, he will stay out and he'll retire, and have
What
a
do you
few
mean?
have a good closing statement and a whole lot of vitriol for those pesky media who did it for. did it
Come
for
on,
him.
Winnie, write the Teller book. I want to read that. I'm down for that.
It's
And
gonna-
I'll take you for a whiskey if you write that book. I'm
Okay.
down for that.
It's going to be a dramatic exit. You'll see it. It's going to be very dramatic. It's going to be memed about for years. Just wait for it.
Yeah, can't wait. So basically, the way the polls are, and I'm talking about the real polls here, not the sort of not the ones that had the yes vote and legalized cannabis far ahead, which were funded by the cannabis lobbyists. But Nielsen, Reed Research, what it looks like is that our next government, with probably 80% certainty at least, will be a coalition of Labour and the Greens. Perhaps the Greens won't get in. It isn't likely. There are enough people who benefit massively from Green Party social policies, and I think they will get 6 or at least 7%.
You reckon?
I think so.
You have to prepare for the worst with this, but that's going to be a really negative situation to be in if that happens.
You reckon 6 or 7%?
I think so. I don't think the
6 or
latest.
7% for the Greens.
I think it could go up to even 8%, depending on
Yeah.
how
Mm.
a lot of the youth vote. I've seen a lot of people my age who have no idea what they're doing, absolutely no brains to it, just voting Greens because they want to save the environment. Sure, the Greens do advocate for saving the environment. However, they mix in economic and social policy, which is completely just unrelated to that. Wealth tax, how does that relate to the...
That's not
To
going to
the-
work either.
I don't think many people are against the environment or against helping the environment. You'd have to be nuts. What really needs to happen is the Green Party needs to split between they may as well call themselves the Social Justice Party, right? They're the ones who tell us, 15 years ago it was trying to mandate the emissions for cows and things like that, and which light bulbs to use, which shower heads because to lessen the water pressure.
Because it's Marxism. They want to control every aspect of your life.
Exactly. So they should split and form the New Zealand Aotearoa Communist Party or whatever.
There
it
is
is.
already one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's one in my electorate right now. There's a Communist Party in New Zealand right here.
So they should join them, and really, the bright minds who are actually there because they care about the environment, provided they can enact policy which will lead to the environment being preserved. At present, look, here's an example. Regulating New Zealand's fishing industry out of business is not going to increase sustainability. The Chinese, who don't give a damn about sustainability, and the Japanese will just boost their efforts to pick up the slack.
Have you seen the cost of fish in your local supermarket recently? For an island nation in the middle of the South Pacific, this is insane.
So, the Greens will get in. I'm not going to be very guarded about my my views on that. But look, this will be our next government, Labour and the Greens. I don't really mind any more than I mind the fact that they're predicting Joe Biden and the Radical Democratic Party are going to win.
Kamala Harris.
And
It's not Joe
No
Biden.
way they're
It's
going
Kamala
to
Harris.
in America, well, if they do, the thing is, there's this cyclical sort of balance to everything, because what will happen is the economy will tank. We are already in a recession. The leftists will enact policy that will make it much worse.
George Lucas was right then. Trump is bringing balance to the force.
But Trump was a reaction for radical policies that were enacted under Obama and Biden.
Yeah.
So really, it's just a correction. So what happens is, if the lefties get in, they will tank the economy far worse, and the result of that will be a movement to the right once again. And we'll see it in New Zealand as well. So Labour and the Greens get another term to themselves. They enact this wealth tax. They enact a whole lot of other policies
do you
that are
know what I
detrimental to
wanna see?
growth.
Do you know what I want to see? I want to see a Labour majority. I want to see the Greens just barely miss out. I want to see Labour have slightly over 50%. That will be the best outcome.
That would actually be better.
Yep.
Because the Greens, I mean, imagine a Greens-only government. Do you know how long it would take for the country to actually sink to the bottom of the ocean?
Well, they're already
They
tying
have
down
no
things.
no concept of economic management, no concept of anything. All they know is how to control people using environmentalism as their method of control.
Because they're eco-fascists.
Eco-fascists.
Yeah,
they're
they're
eco-fascists. That is the Green Party. That is all
I
they
would
do.
much rather see, and I've always sort of said this, because I'm in favour of first past the post rather than MMP. I would much rather see Jacinda Ardern be Prime Minister. Yes, Jacinda, I'd rather see you be Prime Minister than you have to have 2 deputy co-leaders from the bloody Greens. For the love of God, all you Labour supporters out there, any of you still watch anything that I'm doing, you haven't defriended me already. If you're still a Labour supporter, vote for Labour. Do not vote for the Greens. For the love of God,
You
those
mean-
eco-fascists have to go.
You mean if you're a Green supporter, just vote Labour? That's all you need to do.
If you're on the left, vote Labour. I would much rather see Jacinda squeak past by like 51% and have a majority, the first majority in MEP history, by herself. I would much rather that than her have to have James Shaw and
Which
I don't even know the other lady's name.
could happen.
Mama
Her
Davidson.
Yeah, there we go.
her popularity is supposedly unparalleled
Please, for the love of
at the
God.
moment. So I mean, if we're going to have a worst case scenario, Labour win, let's make it an all-out win.
Yeah, and prove my point that they're completely retarded.
I will go out and campaign. Don't vote Greens. Vote Labour. Yes,
Absolutely.
vote Labour.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Fucking
Let's
much better that way.
let's tax this. Let's
Well,
do it.
I'm going to make a shitload of money if we do this. So it's actually in my favour if you guys who support the left want to vote Labour. I'm going to make a lot of money out of this. So let's do it. Don't vote the Greens though. What are you doing?
So
if you're going to do that, vote ACT at least. Go and read some of Simon's core policies as part of the ACT Party policy. He's much more of an environmentalist than the Greens. So then you could do a Labour Party vote and an ACT electoral vote. That would be interesting.
And I mean, not trying to sound like a, believe it or not trying to sound like a mouthpiece for the ACT Party, but one of the issues that nobody wants to talk about, because nobody really has a solution, but David Seymour has been very upfront about the mounting debt crisis and has even forwarded a plan to alleviate said debt. Labour and National, nowhere to be found. And realistically, all the scaremongering and the Greens were saying, oh, they'll only do it by cutting government services. That's exactly what needs to happen. The government is absolutely bloated. Yeah, we're libertarians, we're going to say that regardless. But seriously, there is so much wastage and so much money being thrown on ridiculous projects
That don't
the end
achieve
does not
anything.
justify the means.
And why are we giving out money to businesses and money to people when we could just give them a tax cut and there would be no bureaucracy and no administrative red tape, all spent on that? So you could just say, okay, 10% tax cut. That's it.
Literally
You
what I
don't, you don't even have to spend anything to do that.
No. Yeah, you actually get to spend less and
You
cut
s-
out some
You're
of the
just
fat.
giving people back their money. That will trigger people to go and buy more. Because people are buying more people have more money, and it just keeps going on and on. That's how the economy works.
It is called the multiplier effect.
Yeah.
This is what it is called in economics, is the multiplier effect. So for every dollar somebody spends, that person gets to spend another dollar, and the government clips the ticket every
Your-
stage along the way.
Your spending is another person's income. So if you spend more, another person has more income, therefore they're going to spend more, keeps going on and on and on. When there's a recession, someone's income goes down. Therefore they spend less, therefore someone else has less income, and so forth, so forth. You need to trigger it so that it goes up, because everything just goes up when that happens.
The beauty of economics, as
all
John
right.
pointed out several podcasts ago, is that it hasn't really developed. There's been nothing more to learn about economics since about the 1960s.
Yep.
We know all of this already.
We have accurate models of predictive capability. We can predict what you do in the economy, and we can predict the outcomes of those events very, very accurately.
So basically, Now let's talk about what happens if the stars align in the favour of liberty-loving people everywhere, and by some major fluke, the Greens are out. ACT, we already know we're in.
New Zealand
with
First is
11
gone.
MPs. New Zealand First is gone. And it's either Labour will have a majority, no doubt, but it's
I reckon it's gonna be
either
real
a hung
close.
parliament or National and ACT, and we have Prime Minister Judith Collins and Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour. What
And-
do you guys think will be done better?
David Seymour won't be deputy PM.
He will be.
No,
What will he be?
He won't. He will refuse the position.
He will be too humble, and he'll say, "No,
I don't know that. Yeah, exactly.
say
He'll be-
put
yep,
put me a minister of
Finance.
finance. Put me a minister of finance, or put me as the minister
Economic recovery.
of economic trade, or COVID. They might make a new post. COVID-19.
No, I don't
recovery?
want to do that.
You
I
know,
don't
in Talkback Radio, they call a question that I just posed a chestnut because it breaks all the meaty answers open.
Well, it's
What
kind
are,
of
what are our thoughts on that? on a ACT national government coming in, I think
That's what I want to see.
that they will go ahead and they will go and do a tax cut. They'll stop all of this bullshit spending. Oh, here's some subsidies. You can go and keep that. It's like, well, how do you know what businesses actually need that? You haven't really done much research on that. Tax cut, they won't put in this wealth tax. They'll get rid of all these taxes. They'll actually put in some infrastructure projects. They'll go and do those infrastructure projects National said they would do for Bill English's campaign. They'll put funding where it needs to be. So, I mean, I'm against paying for healthcare, but they probably will put money in that. They'll probably put some money in education, but I mean, again, against that, but I actually do think it is necessary. What you need to be doing as well is getting people off the benefit. Go and build houses. Get them to build trenches. Get them to make
Infrastructure.
get
man.
them to do things. You can dig a trench. You don't need to have an education to dig a trench. You can go on a truck, get taken out there. Here's a shovel, dig it. Okay, 8 hours. Go home. That's
Well,
it.
Then you can show your kids
and-
the settlement that you built.
What you can also do is you can bring out actual experienced people to train them. So it's an on-the-job training program. They could do it for 2 or 3 years, learn that trade. They can go to university or Polytech and learn it more, or they can just keep doing it. I am one for learning on the job. You can learn as you go. You don't need to go to university. I mean,
you
maybe
been to university?
if you're being a doctor or being a lawyer. No, I have not been to university. I'm 22. I work in a software company as a product engineer. I've been there for 3 years, and I'm moving up the ladder. I'm going places. You don't have to do what I do. You can do anything, and there's room for you. There's opportunity everywhere. So why are you sitting at home receiving the benefit? Why?
Because we make it too easy.
It's too easy. It's too easy.
And I think we can do a podcast on the education system and the decision many years ago to push tertiary education over all else, which had disastrous consequences in terms of people getting into trades and doing far more useful activities. But really what I think would be the greatest legacy of National and ACT taking over is simply they will pay off the debt far more efficiently. They will cut back government services, and I know there are an enormous number of people who will be very upset about that. Mostly because they have been conditioned to depend on said government services.
But also, they think it's cutting back on the services that they receive. But what it's actually cutting back is on all the absolutely rubbish little pet projects that they have nothing to do with. So it's not going to affect things that you receive anyway.
For example, I know this is probably not government funded. This is Auckland Council funded, but still in the same bracket. Why are we building a sky bridge? How does that benefit us? What is it, like 120 million? I don't know. 5 million? Doesn't matter how many million it is. Go and fix your public transport system. I want to see in the next 5 years rail to, Auckland Airport, and even build another bridge or a tunnel.
Definitely.
Auckland has the worst public transport system and the worst infrastructure of any city in New Zealand, and it is responsible for 40% of our GDP. Most people live in Auckland. It's the fastest growing location. What are we doing? And it's like, oh, Auckland Council can't manage it. Well, the government should step in and take a better role in doing that. They should go, Auckland Council, you're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to cut your funding or whatever. I don't know. But
They should focus on the facilitation of trade between people. That's all they have to really do, which includes infrastructure, rail and buses and public transport. It includes all of those things.
Move the ports of Auckland out of Auckland.
Please, dear God, Winston, just go and do that, please.
Yeah.
What the hell is the ports of Auckland doing in the shitty little harbour they have right on the prime state real estate in the front of the waterfront?
It should be tourism only.
I believe Auckland is the only major city in a developed country where we have our port right where the downtown area would otherwise be, and we have trucks and rail taking freight in an area which should be, this is the gateway to the world. Welcome to New Zealand, or Aotearoa, or whatever you prefer to call it.
I would say bring the cruise ships in, but they can't come here anymore, so,
Remember that waterfront stadium idea they had in 2006? Oh my word, wouldn't that have been incredible?
Yes,
They upgraded Eden Park.
It would have been good. It would have been good.
They upgraded Eden Park, and now the land that Eden Park is sitting on could be home to an enormous number of people.
What are they getting? Just endless complaints from all the residents around Eden Park for the noise. Stick it in some area where there's offices. No one's there at night. No one sleeps there.
Trying to catch a train home on a Friday night when you're having a game, the train's filled up. I'm trying to go to New Lynn. I don't care about what's happening at Mount Eden. I'm not going there. I'm not a sports fan. I know everyone else is, but I'm not.
Oh God, it's a national religion, mate.
How do I get home? Oh, I have to stand up in the corner because everyone is on the train. Can you put that somewhere else where I don't have to sit in the corner?
Just have a bit more services. If you're going to go that route, I hate public transport, but public transport is useful for a lot of people because it does save a lot of time in parking.
Another thing, though, is that the entire fundamental idea of a city is completely flawed. We're now in the 21st century. We have advanced technologies for getting from A to B. We also have the ability to work remotely. Why are we not decentralizing the entire city concept? Everyone should be working within a 5 to 10 kilometer radius of where they live. Ideally, less than that. Be great if I could just get out of bed, walk 5 to 10 minutes to my work, could be an office building, and work there. Companies should be looking at getting offices in different areas, or just saying you can work from home and then renting out spaces maybe twice a week or once every fortnight.
It's even better if they work from home because then you don't have to pay all the expensive office rents.
And perhaps the revolution of trying to cope with the global pandemic will lead to that. There were already processes that were underway, working from home, abandonment of the traditional office and things like that. But
you know what the problem is, though?
What's that?
So, the problem is socialism. Because those people that vote in favour of socialism and vote in favour of Labour and the Greens, which make up 36%-ish of the population based on last election results, those people are not self-managing. You have to send them to an office, and you have to have a manager micromanage everything they do and look after them like little children all the time. Because if you don't, if you let them work from home, they won't do the work. And they are continuously trying to build bigger and bigger corporations so that their lack of doing the work is not discovered by anyone who's asking them to do the work. These people are unemployable. And that is why they need this structure.
I think this actually stems into something one of my colleagues said today, which is companies try to achieve productivity through control. However, if you give people the means and the trust for them to put their own effort in and to do the work that they can, they will actually be productive on their own. They may not be putting in 8 hours or whatever every day. However, if you give them just everything they need to go and do it, they'll get the job done. Maybe they'll only do it in 6 hours or 7 hours, but work smart, don't work hard, and trust people. Trust that they'll get it done. If they don't get it done, okay, go and have your one-on-one with your manager. Manager can go, okay, why didn't you do this? If they have a good reason, then sure, help them with that. But if they don't, I guess you're out of the job. Everyone should have the ability to prove themselves without micromanagement.
That is an excellent point. Stop treating people like machines. Start treating them about people. Build machines to do the boring, meaningless tasks. That's why we invented machines.
Well, eventually automation is going to take over a lot of menial jobs,
Good.
and some of them will be very happy to see go.
Good.
Wow. Well, that was a hell of a free-for-all that began with discussing
fun
the
when there's three
upcoming
people.
election. But basically, if there's a takeaway from that, this is how 3 people who voted for the ACT Party discuss politics. We go off on tangents, it gets really nuts, we talk about the nature of work, the nature of the media, and it's not just about our predictions for the upcoming election, but I hope you voted.
If you haven't, please do.
I won't judge you if you don't, as I've
I
already
will.
made clear. He will.
You
You
are
still
being
have
judged.
You still have 2 days. 2
Get out there
days.
and do it.
Go and vote. If you don't vote, then you're missing out because you have the chance to choose your future. Choose your future now and choose a future of freedom. Vote
God, the
ACT.
future, that's all. Choose your future. Back your future.
Yep.
Everything about the future. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
You know, the marketing people are out of ideas.
Go and do it. Go and vote. Represent your democracy. Represent yourself. Make sure you vote for the party that lines best with you.
This Saturday, voting booths will be open till 7 or 9 p.m. So there's no excuse. Go and vote. Do
Yeah.
it.
Get it for us. It's about time.
And thank you very much for joining us. If you disagree, please tell us why.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Do I have to say that now?
Oh no, come on. That's
Goes
like
without
the
saying.
reminds me of the marketing and everything. Get out and vote.
No, it's funny. Do it. No, smash that dislike button. I'm going to steal something from someone
Hey,
else.
thanks for listening anyway. We'll catch you next
Thanks
week.
for joining us. Take care.